There are mornings that feel like every other morning. The kind where sunlight filters through kitchen curtains and golden ribbons, where the coffee maker gurgles its familiar song, and where life moves at the pace of routine. Birds sang outside our window that Tuesday morning, their chorus blending with the rustle of newspaper pages as I sat at our breakfast table, completely unaware that the next 5 minutes would crack open everything I thought I knew about love, time, and the people we take for granted. 21 years. That's how long Sarah and I have been married. 21 years of shared coffee cups, inside jokes, comfortable silences, and the beautiful mundane dance of building a life together. You reach a point in marriage where you think you've heard every possible sentence your spouse could say. You think you know all their quirks, all their thoughts, all their surprises. I was wrong. Sarah moved through the kitchen that morning like she always did, humming something under her breath, her movements practiced and graceful. The smell of toast mingled with the coffee, and I turned another page of the sports section, mumbling something about the local team's chances this season. Normal, peaceful, safe. Then she sat down beside me. There was something different in the way she did it. Not the usual quick perch before rushing off to work, but a deliberate, careful settling into the chair. The kind of sitting down that means a conversation is coming. I looked up from the paper, and that's when I saw her eyes. Calm, yes, but with something swimming beneath the surface. Something that made my stomach tighten, before I even knew why. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, gentle, but there was a tremor in them I'd never felt before. "There's something I want from you," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight that made the morning air feel suddenly heavy. I smiled, expecting her to ask me to pick something up from the store, or maybe to finally fix that squeaky cabinet in the bathroom. "Sure, honey. What is it?" What came next made time stop. "I want you to take another woman out on a date." The words hung in the air between us like smoke, impossible and suffocating. My brain scrambled to process what I just heard, running through possibilities, searching for context, finding nothing that made sense. A laugh bubbled up from my chest, nervous and confused. "You're joking, right? Is this some kind of test?" But Sarah wasn't laughing. Her eyes held mine with an intensity that made my smile fade like mist in sunlight. "No," she said quietly. "I'm not joking. I love you more than anything in this world. But I know she loves you too. And I want you to give her a little of your time. Just a few hours. One evening." My heart hammered against my ribs. Questions exploded in my mind, each one darker than the last. Was she sick? Was this some bizarre bucket list request? Had I missed something, some fundamental crack in our marriage that I'd been too blind to see? "Sarah, what are you talking about? What woman? I don't understand." She squeezed my hand tighter, and I saw tears beginning to pool in the corners of her eyes, though she refused to let them fall. "That woman," she said, her voice breaking just slightly, "is your mother." The world tilted. Of all the things I'd been bracing for, all the terrible scenarios my mind had conjured in those few seconds, this had never even entered the realm of possibility. My mother? I blinked, opened my mouth, closed it again. No words came. Sarah continued, and each word was a carefully aimed arrow finding its mark in my chest. "Your mother has been living alone for 19 years. 19 years since your father passed, and you visit her maybe twice a year. Maybe 3 times if we count Christmas and her birthday, which we both know you sometimes forget." The shame hit me like cold water, because she was right. God, she was right, and I'd never let myself fully acknowledge it. "She calls you every Sunday," Sarah went on, her voice gentle but unflinching. "And you always promise you'll come by next weekend. You always say you'll take her to lunch, to dinner, anywhere. And somehow, next weekend never comes, does it?" I stared down at our joined hands, unable to meet her eyes. My throat felt tight, constricted by a knot of guilt I'd been carefully ignoring for years. "When was the last time you took her anywhere? Not out of obligation, not as a quick stop on the way to somewhere else, but actually spent time with her, talked to her, really looked at her?" I couldn't answer. I didn't have an answer. The truth was, I couldn't remember. Months? A year? Longer? Images began flooding my mind, unbidden and unwelcome. My mother sitting alone at her kitchen table, the one that used to seat 5 when Dad and my siblings and I all lived at home. My mother at her window, watching cars pass, maybe hoping one would turn into her driveway. My mother on the phone, her voice always so cheerful when I called, never letting on how lonely the weeks between our conversations must have been. "She's been there for you your entire life," Sarah said, and now a single tear did escape, trailing down her cheek. She waited up for you when you were a teenager sneaking in past curfew. She held you when your first girlfriend broke your heart. She worked 2 jobs to put you through college. She was at our wedding, crying harder than anyone because she was so happy for you. And now she sits in that house alone, and she never complains. She never guilts you. She just loves you from a distance because she doesn't want to be a burden. Each word was a hammer blow. Each sentence revealed a truth I've been too comfortable, too busy, too self-absorbed to face. I'm not asking you to change your whole life, Sarah said, her voice softening. I'm just asking you for one evening. Take her to dinner. Talk to her. Let her feel, for just a few hours, like she matters as much as everyone else in your busy schedule. Because she's been waiting and she'll keep waiting. But we both know she won't wait forever. Time doesn't work that way. The kitchen fell silent. The coffee maker had stopped gurgling. The birds outside seemed to pause their song. Even the sunlight streaming through the window felt dimmer somehow, as if the morning itself was holding its breath. I looked at my wife, this woman who had just held up a mirror to my worst failing with such love and gentleness that it hurt more than any accusation could have. And I realized something profound. Sarah hadn't just asked me to take my mother on a date. She'd asked me to remember what it means to be a son. To remember that love isn't just a feeling you carry in your heart. It's an action you take, time you give, presence you offer. Okay, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Okay, I'll call her today. Sarah smiled then, a sad, knowing smile that said she understood exactly how hard this would be for me. Not because spending time with my mother was difficult, but because facing how long I neglected her would be excruciating. She stood up, kissed the top of my head, and walked away, leaving me alone with my newspaper, my cold coffee, and the crushing weight of 19 years of next weekends that never came. That day, I didn't know I was saying yes to the last dinner I would ever share with my mother. I didn't know I was about to receive a gift I could never repay. And I had no idea that the simplest invitation would become the most precious memory I'd carry for the rest of my life. It takes hours of writing and editing to bring you true stories like this one that remind us what really matters in life. If you believe in love, family, and making the most of the time we have, subscribe now. It's free. Only those who've forgotten what it means to truly cherish someone would scroll past without clicking that button. Drop a comment below. Would you go on that date if your spouse asked you to? Or would you make excuses like I almost did? The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hand that evening. I'd picked it up 3 times already, started to dial, then set it back down. Sarah watched me from across the living room, patient and silent, but I could feel her presence like a gentle pressure, reminding me of the promise I'd made. What was I afraid of? This was my mother, the woman who'd taught me to tie my shoes, who'd bandaged every scraped knee, who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Why did calling her to ask for dinner feel harder than giving a presentation to a boardroom full of executives? Because it revealed everything I'd failed to do. Because it highlighted every missed call, every postponed visit, every time I'd chosen convenience over connection. Because this one phone call contained within it an apology I didn't know how to voice. I pressed dial before I could talk myself out of it again. It rang once, twice, 3 times. With each ring, my heart beat faster. Maybe she wouldn't answer. Maybe she was out. Maybe she was busy. Maybe... Hello? Her voice stopped my spiraling thoughts. It sounded older than I remembered, softer, with a slight breathiness that hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had been, and I just never noticed. Hey, Mom. A pause. I could hear her surprise in the silence. Sweetheart? Is everything all right? Did something happen? And there it was. The immediate assumption that I only called when something was wrong. The sad truth that my voice on the other end of the line had become synonymous with emergency or obligation rather than simply wanting to talk. No, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine. I wanted to ask you something. Of course. What is it? I took a breath. Why was this so hard? Would you like to go out to dinner with me? This Saturday evening. The pause that followed stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Mom? You still there? Yes, I'm here. Her voice had changed, become smaller, uncertain. Is something happening? Is this about something specific? No, nothing specific. I just want to spend some time with you. That's all. Another pause, and then her voice came through with a quality I hadn't heard in years. Childlike wonder mixed with disbelief. Just us two? Just you and me? Something shattered in my chest at the shock in her voice. The fact that the simple invitation, something that should have been ordinary, regular, expected, Stunned her so much told me everything about how badly I'd failed. Yes, Mom. Just us two. I'll pick you up at 6. She started, and I heard her voice crack. I would love that. I would really love that. Then it's a date. I'll see you Saturday at 6. I'll be ready. I'll be waiting. We said our goodbyes, and I sat there staring at the phone for a long moment after call ended. Sarah came and sat beside me, taking my hand the way she had that morning. That wasn't so hard, was it? She asked gently. It shouldn't have been hard at all, I replied. That's what makes it so damn awful. Saturday arrived faster than I expected and slower than I wanted, all at the same time. I found myself standing in front of my closet that afternoon, actually debating what to wear. When was the last time I'd cared about my appearance for my mother? I pulled out a button-down shirt, ironed it carefully, chose slacks instead of jeans. Our teenage daughter, Emma, wandered past my bedroom and did a double take. Whoa, Dad, you look fancy. Where are you going? Out to dinner. With Mom. With Grandma. She leaned against the doorframe, a smile playing at her lips. You're going on a date with Grandma? That's actually really sweet. And kind of funny. You look nervous. I am nervous, I admitted, fumbling with my cufflinks. Why? It's just Grandma. Just Grandma. As if 19 years of distance could be bridged with a simple dinner. As if I could make up for all the lost time of one evening. As if the weight of my neglect wouldn't sit at the table with us, like an unwelcome guest. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who make us most nervous, I said, because we know them well enough to know when we've let them down. Emma's smile faded into something more thoughtful. Have you let Grandma down? I looked at my daughter, this beautiful young woman who was growing up so fast, and I chose honesty more times than I can count. But I'm trying to do better. Starting tonight. She walked over and fixed my collar, which I'd gotten slightly crooked. Well, you look great. She's going to be so happy. My son, 12-year-old Jake, poked his head in. Are you really going on a date with Grandma? That's so weird. But like, cool weird. It's not a date. I started, then stopped myself. Why was I correcting him? Actually, yeah, it is a date. And I'm the luckiest guy in the world that she said yes. Sarah peered behind the kids, ushering them out. All right, give her father some space. He's got a lady to impress. When they'd gone, she came up to me and straightened my collar one more time, even though Emma had already fixed it. It was just an excuse to stand close. Don't keep her waiting too long, she whispered. And don't try to fix everything in one night. Just be there. That's all she wants. Just you, present and real. I kissed her forehead. Thank you for making me do this. Thank me by doing it again. And again. Make this the first of many, not a one-time thing you check off a list. I promised I would, not knowing how hollow that promise would become. The drive to my mother's house felt surreal. I'd made this trip dozens of times before, but never with this kind of anticipation thrumming through my veins. The neighborhood looked the same as always. The Johnsons' rose garden, the Patels' newly painted fence, the old oak tree on the corner where I used to climb as a kid. But everything felt different, weighted with significance. I pulled into her driveway at exactly 6 o'clock. The house looked smaller than I remembered, though it was the same house I'd grown up in. The garden was meticulously maintained, flowers blooming in neat rows. The porch light was already on, even though the sun hadn't fully set. Before I could even get out of the car, the front door opened. She stood there in the doorway, and my breath caught. She put on her best dress, the blue one with small white flowers that she wore to church on Easter. Her hair was done, styled with more care than I'd seen in years. She wore the pearl earrings Dad had given her on their 20th anniversary, the ones she usually kept locked away in her jewelry box because they were too precious for everyday wear. But it was her face that stopped me cold. She was glowing, absolutely radiant with joy and nervousness, like a teenager going to prom. And in that glow, I saw how much she'd aged since I'd really looked at her. New lines around her eyes, gray threading through her hair more extensively than I'd noticed, a slight stoop to her shoulders that hadn't been there before. How long had it been since I'd really seen her? Not glanced at her, not said a quick hello and goodbye, but actually looked? I got out of the car and walked up the path. She fidgeted with her purse, a small beaded thing that had been out of style for decades, but she kept because Mom never threw anything away. Hi, sweetheart, she said, and there was a tremor in her voice. I wasn't sure what to wear. Is this okay? Should I change? You look beautiful, Mom. Really beautiful. Her eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. "Oh, stop it. You're just being nice. I'm being honest." And I was. She looked beautiful not because of the dress or the hair or the earrings, but because she looked happy. Truly, genuinely happy in a way I suddenly realized I hadn't seen in far too long. She locked the door behind her, tested the handle twice to make sure it was secure, a habit I'd forgotten she had, and let me guide her to the car. I opened the door for her, and she paused before getting in. "This is nice," she said quietly. "Being treated like a lady. Your father used to do this. Every single time. He'd open my door. I'd forgotten what it felt like. Guilt twisted in my stomach again. When was the last time I'd opened a door for her? When was the last time anyone had? We drove to Giovanni's, an Italian restaurant downtown that had been there since I was a kid. It was nice without being too fancy, the kind of place where you could have a real conversation without feeling like you had to whisper. The hostess led us to a quiet table by the window. Mom slid into her seat and looked around with bright eyes, taking in every detail. The soft lighting, the checkered tablecloths, the paintings of the Italian countryside on the walls. "I haven't been here in years," she said. "Your father brought me here once for our anniversary. They had this pasta with vodka sauce that was just divine." The waiter came by and handed us menus. Mom opened hers and squinted at it slightly. I noticed her hand shake just a bit as she held it. "Do you need your reading glasses?" I asked. "Oh, I can manage. The print is just a bit small, that's all." But I could see her struggling, pride keeping her from admitting she couldn't quite make out the words in the dim lighting. "You know," I said, taking the menu from her gently, "when I was little, you used to read the menu to me. Every time we went out, you'd go through each item and describe them so I could picture them, remember?" She smiled, that faraway look of memory softening her features. "You always wanted to know what everything was, what it tasted like, how it was made. You asked so many questions. Then it's only fair that now it's my turn." I read through the menu to her, describing each dish the way she used it for me. She listened with her eyes closed, smiling, occasionally interjecting with, "Oh, that sounds good," or "Your father loved that one." We ordered the vodka pasta for her, chicken marsala for me, and a bottle of wine to share. When the waiter left, silence fell between us. Not an uncomfortable silence, but one weighted with all the things we hadn't said to each other in 19 years. She was the one who broke it. "I thought you forgot what I look like," she said, and there was no accusation in her voice. Just a simple statement of fact wrapped in gentle humor. The words hit harder than any anger could have. "Mom, She reached across the table and patted my hand. "I'm not scolding you, sweetheart. I know you're busy. You have a family, a career, a whole life. I understand. That's not an excuse. Maybe not, but it's a reason." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "When you kids grew up and moved away, I told myself that was success. That was what I'd worked for, to raise children strong enough and confident enough to build their own lives. And you did. You built a beautiful life, and I'm so proud of that. But, she continued, her voice soft, "sometimes I look at the phone, and I think about calling you, and then I worry I'm interrupting something important. Or I start a dial, and wonder if you'll think I'm being needy. So I wait. I always wait for you to call first, because at least then I know it's a good time for you." My throat tightened. "You're my mother. It's never a bad time. Isn't it, though?" She smiled sadly. "Be honest with me. How many times have you seen my name pop up on your phone and thought, 'I'll call her back later,' and then later never came?" I couldn't lie to her. "Not here, not now. Too many times." That's what I thought. She didn't say it meanly, just matter-of-factly. "It's okay. That's just how life works now. Everyone's so busy, always rushing somewhere, always connected to their screens, but never really connecting. I'm not special just because I'm your mother." "Yes, you are," I said, more forcefully than I intended. "You are special. You're the most special person in my life, and I've been taking that for granted." Our food arrived, and we both welcomed the interruption, the chance to collect ourselves and redirect the emotional current flowing between us. As we ate, the conversation shifted to lighter things. She asked about the kids, and I told her about Emma's upcoming school play and Jake's obsession with building model rockets. She laughed at all the right moments, her face lighting up with each story, hungry for these details of our lives that I've been rationing out in small doses over phone. She told me about her book club, about Mrs. Henderson next door, who just got a new puppy that kept digging up her tulips, about the church potluck, where everyone brought the same pasta salad, and they had to pretend each one was unique. Time moved differently that evening. Hours felt like minutes, each moment stretching and condensing simultaneously. The restaurant slowly emptied around us as other diners finished and left, but we kept talking about Dad and the funny things he used to do, about my childhood and stories I'd forgotten or never knew, about nothing and everything. At some point, I realized I was seeing my mother not just as mom, but as a whole person, a woman with her own dreams that had been deferred or abandoned to raise me and my siblings, a widow who navigated nearly 2 decades of loneliness with grace, a human being who laughed and worried and hoped and feared just like everyone else. When had I stopped seeing her this way? When had she become just mom, just an obligation, just a voice on Sunday phone calls rather than a full, complex, beautiful person? The waiter eventually came by to gently remind us that the kitchen was closing. I was shocked to see it was nearly midnight. We'd been there for 6 hours. I paid the bill, and we walked slowly to the car. Mom moved carefully, her steps smaller than I remembered. Age had crept up on her when I wasn't looking, stealing inches and stability. The drive back to her house was quiet, but a comfortable quiet, the kind that comes after good conversation, when words have been exhausted, and what remains is simple presence. I pulled into her driveway and killed the engine, intending to walk her to the door, but she had moved to get out right away. She sat there, her hands folded in her lap, staring at her house with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Thank you," she finally said, "for tonight, for letting me feel special again. You are special, Mom. You've always been special. To you, maybe, but in the world, I'm just another old widow. People smile politely but look right through me. You know what I love about our Sunday calls. Even if they're short, for those few minutes, someone needs to hear what I have to say. Someone cares about my opinion. It makes me feel like I still matter." My eyes burned. "You matter so much, Mom. More than I've shown you." She turned to me then, and even in the dim light from the porch, I could see tears on her cheeks. I know I won't be around forever, and I've made my peace with that. But tonight made me feel like maybe I'm not just counting down days. Maybe there's still time for moments like this. She reached over and cupped my face with her hand, the way she used to when I was small. "Can we do this again? Not because you feel guilty, but because you wanna." "I want to," I said, and I meant it with everything in me. "I promise we will." "Next time," she said, a playful smile breaking through the tears, "let me invite you. I want to pick the restaurant. I want to treat my successful son to dinner." I laughed. "Deal. You call the shots next time." "Promise?" "Promise." She kissed my forehead, her lips dry and warm, and then she got out of the car. I watched her walk to her door, unlock it, and turned away one more time before going inside. I waited until the lights came on, until I knew she was safely inside, before I finally pulled away. The drive home felt dreamlike. I kept replaying moments from the evening. Her laugh when I imitated Dad's terrible singing, her eyes when she talked about my childhood, her hand on my face at the end. Sarah was waiting on the couch when I got home, a book in her lap, but clearly not reading it. She looked up as I entered, a question in her eyes. "How is it?" I sat down beside her, suddenly exhausted but in the best way. Better than I could have imagined. So much better. She leaned against me. "Tell me." I told her everything. The dinner, the conversations, the realization that I'd been letting years slip by without truly knowing this woman who'd given me life. Sarah listened without interrupting, her hand finding mine. When I finished, I pulled her close and whispered against her hair. "Thank you. Thank you for making me do this. Thank you for seeing what I was too blind to see. You would have figured out eventually," she said softly. "Maybe, but eventually might have been too late." We sat there in the dark living room, holding each other, and I felt something shift inside me, a determination to be better, to do better, to never again let next weekend become a lie. I told to make myself feel less guilty. That night, I didn't realize I'd been handed a gift I could never return or repay. I didn't know that the promise I'd made, to do this again, to let her pick the restaurant, to have next time, would become the most painful words I'd ever speak. Because there are some promises we make with our whole heart, never imagine that life has other plans. And sometimes, the last dinner we share with someone we love masquerades as the first of many. Comment below. When was the last time you called your mom just to talk? Not because you needed something, not because it was a holiday, but just because you wanted to hear her voice? Let us know in the comments. Life has this cruel way of returning to normal, even after moments that should change everything. The Monday after that dinner with my mother, I woke up to the same alarm, brushed my teeth in the same bathroom, kissed Sarah goodbye in the same rush way I always did before heading to work. The extraordinary had already begun fading into the ordinary, like a vivid dream dissolving in morning light. But something was different. Something small but significant. Sarah noticed it first. That evening, when I came through the door, she was smiling at me in that knowing way of hers. "What?" I asked, loosening my tie. "You're humming." I stopped mid-motion. "I am. The same song your mother was humming at dinner." She must have mentioned it. She had. An old jazz standard Dad used to play on Sunday mornings, back when the house was full of life and laughter and the smell of her famous pancakes. I hadn't even realized I'd carried it home with me. Let it take up residence in some corner of my mind. "How was your day?" Sarah asked. The question she asked every single day, but this time I heard it differently. I heard what my mother had said about Sunday phone calls, how those few minutes made her feel like someone cared about her answer. So instead of my usual fine or busy, I actually told her about the meeting that ran long, about the coworker who brought donuts, about the sunset I'd noticed on the drive home. Small things, meaningless things, except they weren't meaningless at all, because Sarah listened like each detail mattered. "I called Mom today," I said as we set the table for dinner, "just to say hi." Sarah paused, a plate in her hands, and her smile could have lit the whole house. "Yeah? How is she?" "Good. Really good. She spent 20 minutes telling me about Mrs. Henderson's puppy destroying her garden. Apparently, it dug up 3 dozen tulip bulbs. And you listened to the whole story? Every word. And you know what? It was nice. Just hearing her voice, hearing her laugh. I didn't realize how much I'd missed that sound." Emma looked up from her phone, something she rarely did at dinner. "Are you guys talking about Grandma? Can we go see her this weekend?" The question caught me off guard. When was the last time the kids had asked to visit their grandmother? When was the last time I'd taken them? "You want to?" I asked. "Yeah. She's always sending me those funny cat videos and asking about school. I kind of miss her." Jake chimed in through a mouthful of mashed potatoes. "She promised to teach me how to make her chocolate chip cookies. The ones with the secret ingredient she won't tell anyone." Sarah caught my eye across the table, and I saw it there. Pride mixed with something else. Relief, maybe. Hope that this wasn't just a one-time thing. That Saturday's dinner had actually planted seeds of change. "Let's make it happen," I said. "This Sunday. We'll spend the afternoon there." The kids actually cheered. My children, who could barely be pulled away from their screens most days, cheered at the prospect of visiting their grandmother. How had I let it get to the point where this was special rather than routine? That week, I called Mom 3 times. Not out of obligation, not because it was Sunday, but because I found myself thinking about her at random moments. Wednesday afternoon, stuck in traffic, I called to ask if she remembered the name of that ice cream place we used to go to when I was a kid. She did, and we spent 15 minutes reminiscing about butter pecan cones. In the summer, I tried to eat 5 in one sitting and made myself sick. Friday morning, during my coffee break, I called to tell her about a cardinal I'd seen in our backyard, because I remembered she loved birds. Her voice brightened immediately, and she told me about the family of wrens nesting in her porch eaves, how she'd been leaving out seeds and watching them through her kitchen window. These calls were short, 10 minutes, 15 at most, but each one felt like a small stitch, repairing tears in fabric I hadn't realized was torn. She sent me voice messages too, something she'd never done before. Little recordings she'd leave during her day. "Good morning, sweetheart. Hope you have a wonderful day. Just finished reading the most interesting article about those rockets Jake loves. Tell him about it tonight. I'm making pot roast for dinner and thought about you. Remember how you used to sneak extra servings?" I listened to every single one, sometimes twice. Sarah would catch me smiling at my phone, and she'd know, without asking, what I was listening to. She never said "I told you so," never pointed out that this was what she'd been gently suggesting for years. She just smiled and went back to whatever she was doing, satisfied that something had finally shifted. Sunday arrived with perfect weather, the kind of crisp autumn day that makes you want to be outside, where leaves crunch on your feet, and the air smells like with smoke and possibility. We loaded into the car as a family, the kids actually excited rather than grudgingly compliant. Mom must have been watching from the window, because the door flew open before we'd even made it up the walk. She stood there in her favorite sweater, the green one with the little flowers, and her face transformed when she saw all of us together. "Oh my goodness. All of you. You're all here." Emma reached her first and wrapped her in a hug that nearly knocked Mom off balance. Jake barreled in next, and I watched my mother's eyes fill with tears as she held my children, her grandchildren, who she saw far too rarely. "Look at you, too," she said, holding them at arm's length. "Emma, you've grown another inch, I swear. And Jake, those freckles are multiplying. Come in, come in. I made cookies, the special ones." The afternoon unfolded like something from a different life. Mom and Jake in the kitchen, her guiding his hands as he rolled dough and placed each chocolate chip, just so. Emma curled up beside her on the couch later, showing her photos on her phone, explaining Instagram and TikTok with the patience of youth teaching age about a foreign language. Sarah and I sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee at the same table I'd eaten breakfast at for 18 years, and I found myself seeing the house through new eyes. The photos on the walls chronicling our lives. The ceramic handprints my siblings and I had made in elementary school. The Afghan on the couch that Mom had crocheted during Dad's long hospital stays, keeping her hands busy, so her mind wouldn't spiral. This house held so much history, so much love, and I had been treating it like a museum I occasionally visited rather than a living heart still beating with life. "She's happy," Sarah whispered, watching Mom laugh at something Emma showed her on the phone. "Look at her face." "Really look." I did, and I saw what Sarah saw. The way Mom glowed from within. The way years seemed to fall away when she was surrounded by people she loved. But I also saw what Sarah maybe didn't. The way Mom moved more slowly. The way she braced herself when standing up. The slight tremor in her hands when she reached for her coffee cup. She was aging. Actively, visibly aging. And I'd been missing it. "I should have been doing this all along," I said quietly. "You're doing it now. That's what matters." But was it enough? Could a few visits make up for years of absence? Could Sunday afternoons now erase all the Sunday afternoons I'd skipped? We stayed until evening, until the sky turned purple and gold, and Mom started yawning despite trying to hide it. She walked us to the door, hugging each of us multiple times, as if trying to memorize the feeling. "Same time next week?" I asked. Her face lit up. "Really? You mean it?" "I mean it." "Then yes. Absolutely yes. I'll make lunch. The pot roast you love." Driving home, Jake fell asleep in the back seat, cookie crumbs on his shirt and a smile on his face. Emma leaned against the window, scrolling through the selfies she'd taken with her grandmother. "Dad," she said without looking up. "Yes, sweetie? Thanks for taking us today." Grandma seemed really happy. She was, "We should have been doing this more often." "Well, we're doing it now." She echoed her mother's words without knowing it. That's what Grandma said. She said it doesn't matter how long it's been. What matters is that we're together now, out of the mouths of teenagers, reflecting the wisdom of grandmothers. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat on our back porch with a beer I wasn't really drinking, watching moths dance around the porch light. Sarah joined me, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah, just thinking. About time. How we think we have so much of it, and then suddenly we don't. How we keep saying next time and later and soon, like they're promises we can actually keep." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "You're not just thinking about your mom, are you?" She was right. I was thinking about us, about our kids, about everyone I loved, and all the ways I've been living on autopilot, letting precious moments slip past while I focus on things that seemed urgent but weren't actually important. That dinner changed something in me, I admitted, made me realize I've been sleepwalking through my own life. "Then stay awake," she said simply. "Keep your eyes open. Keep showing up. That's all any of us can do." I pulled her closer, grateful beyond words to this woman who'd loved me enough to give me a wake-up call wrapped in the gentlest possible package. "I love you," I said. "I love you too. And I'm proud of you." The next few weeks fell into a new rhythm. Sunday dinners at Mom's became sacred, untouchable. Work meetings got rescheduled. Social obligations got declined. Nothing took priority over those afternoons with her. She bloomed under the attention. I noticed it in small ways. She started wearing nicer clothes again, not just the old house dresses she defaulted to. She got her hair styled at the salon instead of just trimming it herself. She mentioned redecorating the guest room, maybe painting a brighter color, getting new curtains. She was making plans, building toward a future. And I was so glad to see it that I didn't recognize it for what it was, a last burst of energy, a final flowering before winter. She sent me daily voice notes now. I'd wake up to her cheerful good morning, son, and fall asleep to her sweet dreams, sweetheart. They became the bookends of my days, small gifts I didn't know I needed. One Thursday morning, her message was longer than usual. I listened to it during my commute, her voice filling the car. Good morning, my wonderful boy. I was just sitting here with my coffee, watching the sun come up, and I was thinking about how blessed I am. The past few weeks have been the happiest I've been in years. Thank you for that. Thank you for choosing me. I know you're busy. I know you have a million things pulling you in different directions, but you keep showing up anyway. That means more than you could possibly know. Anyway, I'm rambling. Have a beautiful day. I love you more than the stars. I had to pull over because my vision blurred with tears. More than the stars. That's what she used to say when I was little and would ask her how much she loved me. I'd forgotten that. Forgotten so many small things that made up the language of our relationship. I called her back immediately. Mom, I just got your message. Oh, sweetheart, I didn't mean to make you emotional. I was just feeling sentimental this morning. I love you more than the stars too, Mom. I should say it more often. You show it. That's enough. But was it? Would it ever be enough? We talked for 20 minutes about nothing in particular. She told me about a documentary she'd watched. I told her about a project at work. Normal conversation. The kind you have when talking to someone isn't a chore, but a choice you actively want to make. When I hung up, I felt good, connected, present. I didn't know it was the last normal conversation we'd ever have. Friday morning, I woke up later than usual. Sarah had already left for an early meeting, and the house was quiet. I went through my routine on autopilot, shower, coffee, checking emails on my phone while I ate toast standing at the counter. No voice message from Mom. It was a small thing. She'd skipped mornings before when she had early appointments or didn't want to wake me. But something felt off. Some instinct I couldn't name raising the hairs on the back of my neck. I called her. It rang, and rang, and rang. Voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. She's probably just out, I told myself. Shopping or the doctor or visiting a friend. But Mom always told me when she had plans. Always left a message letting me know she'd be unavailable. I tried a third time, even though I knew she wouldn't answer. Because what else could I do? I was 40 minutes away, already late for work, and I was probably overreacting anyway. I sent her a text. Hey, Mom, checking in. Call me when you get this. The morning crawled by with excruciating slowness. Every time my phone buzzed, I grabbed it, hoping to see her name. But it was just work emails, text messages from colleagues, the usual digital noise of modern life. By lunch, the knot in my stomach had grown into a full-blown pit of anxiety. I called Mrs. Henderson, Mom's neighbor. Hello, Mrs. Henderson, this is Tom Daniels. I'm trying to reach my mother, and she's not answering. Have you seen her today? Oh, Tom, hello. No, I haven't seen her since yesterday afternoon. We chatted over the fence while she was watering her flowers. Is everything all right? I'm sure it's fine. I'm probably just being paranoid. But if you see her, could you ask her to call me? Of course, dear. I'll keep an eye out. I hung up and stared at my computer screen, unable to focus on the presentation I was supposed to be reviewing. Something was wrong. I felt it in my bones, in the way your body knows things before your mind catches up. At 2:30, my phone rang. The number wasn't Mom's. It was local but unfamiliar. Hello, is this Thomas Daniels? Yes, speaking. Mr. Daniels, this is Dr. Patricia Chun from Mercy Hospital. I'm calling about your mother, Margaret Daniels. The world stopped. Sound faded. Time stretched and compressed simultaneously. What happened? Is she okay? Your mother was brought in by ambulance this morning. A neighbor found her collapsed in her driveway. She's stable now, but she suffered a severe stroke. We need you to come to the hospital as soon as possible. The rest of the conversation happened through a fog. ICU, 3rd floor, visiting hours. Words that felt like they were coming from very far away. I was in my car before I even realized I'd left my office. The drive to the hospital blurred past in the panic of traffic lights and turns I made on autopilot. My hands shook on the steering wheel. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. She was fine yesterday. She'd sent me a voice message just yesterday morning. How could everything change so fast? I called Sarah. She'd meet me there. I called Emma's school, Jake's school, told them there was a family emergency. I didn't call my siblings yet. I didn't know what to tell them. The hospital loomed ahead, all glass and steel and fluorescent lighting that felt aggressively bright and cold. I parked haphazardly and ran through the automatic doors, to the information desk, to the elevator, to the third floor. A nurse intercepted me before I reached the ICU doors. Mr. Daniels? Yes. My mother, Margaret Daniels. Where is she? Come with me. She led me through the maze of the ICU to a room where machines beeped and hummed and breathed for the people who couldn't. And there, in the bed surrounded by tubes and wires and monitors, was my mother. She looked so small, so fragile, like she'd shrunk overnight into something breakable. Her eyes were closed. Her face was slack on one side, distorted by the stroke. Her hair, usually so carefully styled, lay flat and tangled against the pillow. This couldn't be my mother. This couldn't be the woman who'd been glowing with happiness just days ago, who'd been making plans to redecorate, who'd sent me that beautiful message yesterday morning. Mom! My voice broke. Her eyes fluttered open, just slightly. Recognition flickered there, along with something that looked like an apology. I took her hand, careful to fore, and pressed it to my cheek. I'm here. I'm right here. She tried to speak, but the words came out slurred, incomprehensible. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes, and I knew she was frustrated, scared, apologizing for needing me when she'd spent her whole life trying not to be a burden. Don't try to talk. Just rest. I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Chin appeared in the doorway. Mr. Daniels, can we speak outside for a moment? I didn't want to leave her, but Sarah had just arrived and moved to take my place beside the bed. I followed the doctor into the harsh fluorescent hallway. The stroke was severe, Dr. Chin said without preamble. Doctors learn quickly that false hope is crueler than hard truth. It's affected her speech, mobility on her left side, and we're seeing some cognitive impairment. The next 72 hours will be critical. Will she recover? The pause before her answer told me everything. It's difficult to say. At her age, with the extent of the damage, we'll do everything we can, but you should prepare yourself and your family. Prepare yourself. Medical code for say your goodbyes. How long does she have? If she stabilizes, potentially weeks or months with intensive care and rehabilitation. But Mr. Daniels, you should know that the quality of life may be significantly impacted. She may never regain full speech or mobility. These are decisions you'll need to discuss as a family. I nodded mechanically, the information entering my ears but not quite reaching my brain. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when we'd just found each other again. I went back into the room. Sarah stood and wrapped me in her arms, and I finally let myself break. Just for a moment, my face buried in her shoulder, while my mother lay dying mere feet away. The kids, I managed. On their way, Emma's bringing Jake. We settled into the awful waiting that happens in hospital rooms. The watching of monitors, the jumping at every beep, the desperate search for signs of improvement that might not come. Emma and Jake arrived within the hour. They stood in the doorway, staring at their grandmother, neither of them knowing how to process what they were seeing. Is Grandma going to be okay? Jake asked, his voice small. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise him that everything would be fine, that we'd take her home and have more Sunday dinners and she'd teach him those cookie recipes. But I'd made enough empty promises in my life. I don't know, buddy, I really don't know. Emma moved to the bedside and gently took her grandmother's hand. Hi, Grandma. It's me. Emma, can you hear me? Mom's eyes open again, and this time they focus on Emma's face. The corner of her mouth that still worked tried to smile. We're all here, Emma continued, tears streaming down her face. We're all here with you, and we love you so much. We stayed through the evening, taking turns sitting beside her, holding her hand, telling her stories she probably couldn't fully understand but hopefully could feel. The love in the room was palpable, thick enough to touch. But so was a goodbye that hung in the air, unspoken but inevitable. If you knew it was the last time you'd see someone you love, what would you say? What would you do differently? Drop your answer in the comments below. 3 days. That's how long she held on in the ICU, her body fighting against the inevitable with the same stubborn strength she'd shown her entire life. We never left. Sarah's parents took care of practical things like feeding the dog and watering plants. My siblings flew in, my brother from Seattle, my sister from Denver, and we took shifts so Mom was never alone. We talked to her constantly, even though she couldn't respond. We played her favorite music, softly, in the background. We read her the book she'd been in the middle of, carried her bookmarked to where she left off, because maybe somehow she could still hear the story. On the third night, I was alone with her during the quiet hours when the hospital feels suspended in time. I held her hand and whispered every apology I'd been carrying, every regret, every wish for more time. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. I'm sorry I let years pass. I'm sorry I didn't tell you every single day how much you meant to me. Her fingers twitched in mine. Once, twice, like she was saying it was okay, like she forgave me for all of it. She passed quietly at 4:17 in the morning, the monitors changing from their steady rhythm to one long, flat note that brought nurses rushing in. They gave me a moment alone before they had to do their official duties. I sat beside her body, because it was just a body now. She was gone, and I felt the weight of every missed opportunity settle onto my shoulders like a physical thing. I love you more than the stars, I whispered to the shell she left behind. I always will. The funeral was everything Mom would have wanted, and nothing I wanted to live through. Rain fell in soft sheets, turning the cemetery grass slick and dark. Sarah stood beside me, her hand gripping mine so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers, but I didn't tell her to loosen her grip. The pain anchored me. My sibling spoke. Emma read a poem. The pastor said words about faith in heaven and reunion, and maybe they brought comfort to some people, but all I heard was the absence, the lack of her voice, her laugh, her gentle presence. They lowered her casket into the ground beside Dad's, and I thought about how she'd been waiting 19 years for this reunion, how she kept his side of the bed clear, kept his favorite mug in the cupboard, kept loving him across the divide of death, and now they were together again. She'd want me to find comfort in that, but all I felt was a crushing weight of too late. The weeks after the funeral moved in slow motion. The house felt too quiet. The world felt wrong, off-kilter, like I was walking through reality that hadn't quite settled back into place. I threw myself into work, staying late, taking on extra projects, anything to avoid the silence that screamed with her absence. Sarah watched me with worried eyes but gave me space, understanding that grief has no timeline, no proper way to be expressed. Emma and Jake grieved in their own ways. Emma spent hours looking through photos on her phone, the selfies she'd taken with her grandmother, the videos of Mom teaching Jake to bake. Jake built a rocket and wrote Mom's name on it in careful letters, then launched it in the backyard, watching it soar like maybe she could see it from wherever she was. I avoided her house. Couldn't bring myself to go there, to see her empty chair, to smell her perfume still lingering in the rooms. My siblings had offered to help sort through her things, but I kept putting it off. Next weekend, I kept saying. Next weekend. The irony wasn't lost on me. One evening, about a month after the funeral, I came home to find a small pile of mail on the kitchen counter. Bills, mostly. Junk mail. A package for Sarah. And one envelope with handwriting I'd know anywhere. Time stopped. My hand shook as I picked it up, turned it over, saw my name written in her careful script. The postmark was dated 2 days before her stroke. Sarah, I called out, my voice strange in my own ears. She appeared from the hallway, took one look at my face, and knew. Is that from... I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Do you want me to? I shook my head. This was mine. This was hers. This moment belonged to us alone. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Sarah had asked me to take my mother on a date, and I held the envelope like it might disintegrate if I wasn't careful. In a way, this was the last piece of her I'd ever receive. The last word she'd ever say to me. Was I ready to hear them? Would I ever be ready? I slid my finger under the flap and opened it slowly. Inside was a folded piece of her favorite stationery, cream color with tiny roses in the corners, and something else, something that crinkled. I unfolded the paper first. My dearest son, I'm writing this at my kitchen table on a Thursday morning, watching the birds at my feeder and thinking about that wonderful dinner we had. It's been playing in my mind on repeat, every moment of it, and I wanted to thank you properly, in a way that feels more permanent than words spoken over phone. You asked me that night to let you know when I wanted to have dinner again, and I said I'd like to pick the restaurant next time. I've been thinking about that, planning it in my head, getting excited about it like a teenager planning a first date. But there's something I need to tell you, and I need you to hear it even if I never get the chance to say it out loud. I'm proud of you, not just for your career or your family or any of the external things you've accomplished. I'm proud of the man you become, thoughtful and kind and willing to grow. That dinner meant everything to me, not just because we got to spend time together, but because you made me feel seen. For those few hours, I wasn't just someone's mother or someone's burden or someone waiting by the phone. I was just me, and you were just you, and we were together. I know life gets busy. I know you have a million demands on your time. Please don't carry guilt about the times you couldn't visit or the calls you couldn't take. I understand. I've always understood. Being a parent means loving your children enough to let them build their own lives, even when it means sometimes loving them from a distance. But here's what I want you to know. Every moment we've shared, from the day you were born to that dinner last month, has been my greatest joy. You were my first baby, the one who made me a mother, and that bond doesn't weaken with time or distance. It just evolves. I'm enclosing something with this letter. After our dinner, I went back to that restaurant and prepaid for another meal. I did it a week later, because I didn't want to wait, didn't want to assume we'd have endless chances to make plans. I wanted to make sure that next time was real, was scheduled, was paid for so you couldn't possibly refuse. Take Sarah there. Sit at our table, if you can. Order the vodka pasta. And while you're there, know that I'm with you in all the ways that matter. I love you more than the stars, my wonderful boy. I always have, and I always will. Mom. The tears came then, hot and heavy, blurring the words on the page until I had to set it down. Sarah appeared beside me, having waited nearby in case I needed her, and she wrapped her arms around me from behind, while I shook with sobs I'd been holding back for weeks. The receipt slipped from the envelope. Giovanni's restaurant. Prepaid. 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine and dessert. She'd thought of everything. She knew. I choked out between sobs. She knew there might not be a next time, so she made sure there would be. Sarah held me tighter. She loved you so much. I didn't tell her enough. I didn't show her enough. All those years I wasted. Stop. Sarah turned me to face her, her hands on either side of my face, forcing me to meet her eyes. She knew. Read the letter again. She knew. And she didn't hold it against you. She gave you grace. Now you need to give yourself grace. But grace felt impossible when all I could see was a weight of lost time, the mathematics of missed opportunities, the irrefutable evidence that I'd taken for granted the one person who'd never asked me for anything except to be remembered. I read the letter 3 more times that night. Then I folded it carefully, put it back in its envelope, and placed it in the drawer of my nightstand where I kept the things too precious to risk losing. Over the next few days, something shifted. The letter didn't erase my grief or my guilt, but it gave me something I had been desperately lacking. Permission. Permission to forgive myself. Permission to believe that love didn't have to be perfect to be real. I started going through her things, slowly, one room at a time. My siblings helped, but it was my task to bear, my final act of service to the woman who'd given me life. In her bedroom, I found photos tucked into her mirror's frame. Me at graduation. Sarah and me on our wedding day. Emma as a baby. Jake blowing out birthday candles. She'd been watching our lives unfold even when she wasn't in the frame. In her kitchen, I found her recipe box, the ancient wooden thing with a broken hinge that she refused to replace because Dad had given it to her on their first anniversary. Inside were index cards written in her neat handwriting, some stained with decades of use, others crisp and new like she just added them. At the very back, behind the card for her famous chocolate chip cookies, I found one more note tucked away. For my children when I'm gone. Every recipe in this box is made with love. But more than that, they're made with memories. The pot roast is Sunday dinners. The apple pie is Thanksgiving. The cookies are Christmas morning and rainy afternoons, and a cure for bad days. When you make these dishes, I'll be there with you. In the smell, in the taste, in the ritual of following steps I followed, that my mother followed before me. This is how love survives death. In recipes passed down, in traditions continued. In the taste of home that lingers on your tongue. Cook with joy. Share with generosity. And remember that food is just a vehicle. What you're really serving is love. I took the recipe box home that day. That evening, while Sarah watched with tears in her eyes, I made Mom's pot roast following her exact instructions, written in her careful hand. The smell that filled our kitchen was more than food. It was childhood. It was comfort. It was her. Emma and Jake set the table without being asked. We sat down together as a family, and I served the pot roast the way Mom used to, making sure everyone had enough, offering seconds before anyone asked. This tastes like Grandma's, Jake said softly. It is Grandma's, I replied, in every way that matters. We ate slowly, savoring not just the food, but what it represented. Connection, continuity, the beautiful, painful truth that the people we love never fully leave us as long as we keep them alive in the small rituals that mattered. After dinner, I pulled out Mom's recipe for apple pie, Emma's favorite. Together, my daughter and I rolled out dough, measured apples, mixed cinnamon and sugar exactly as the card instructed. Tell me a story about Grandma, Emma said as we worked. So I did. I told her about the time Mom accidentally dyed all our clothes pink because I left a red sock in the laundry. About the summer she taught me to ride a bike and ran alongside me for 3 hours until I finally got it. About how she used to sing off-key while cooking and claimed it made the food taste better. Emma laughed at the funny parts and cried at the tender ones, and I realized this was part of the recipe too. The stories we told, the memories we preserved, the love we kept alive through words and food and time spent together. The pie came out perfect, golden brown and fragrant. We didn't eat it that night. It needed to cool. But the next day, we cut thick slices and served them with vanilla ice cream. And for just a moment, it felt like Mom was sitting at the table with us, smiling at how well we'd followed her instructions. Would you open that envelope right away? Or keep it sealed forever? Sometimes the last words someone leaves us are too precious to rush, too painful to face, and too important to ignore. What would you do? Tell us in the comments. 6 weeks after Mom died, I finally opened the drawer where I'd been keeping her letter. I'd read it countless times already, but the receipt, that prepaid meal at Giovanni's, had been sitting there untouched, waiting. Every time I thought about using it, something held me back. Fear, maybe, or the certainty that once we use that final gift, there will be nothing left. No more surprises from beyond the grave. No more ways she could reach across the divide between life and death to remind me she loved me. But I also knew what she'd want. She hadn't prepaid that meal so it could sit in a drawer forever, yellowing with age and lost potential. She'd done it so Sarah and I could have an evening together, so we could remember, so we could feel her love even in her absence. On a Saturday evening, when the sky was bruising purple with twilight and the air held that peculiar stillness that comes before autumn fully surrenders to winter, I finally told Sarah we were going. "Tonight?" she asked, looking up from her book. "Tonight, I think I'm ready." She set the book aside immediately, came to me, and took both my hands in hers. "Are you sure?" "No, but I don't think I'll ever be sure." And she didn't prepay for certainty. She prepaid for us to show up anyway. Sarah smiled, that gentle, understanding smile I'd fallen in love with decades ago. Then let's show up. We got dressed with unusual care, like we were preparing for something sacred. Because we were. This wasn't just dinner. It was communion, ritual, the fulfillment of a promise made by a woman who'd known she might not be there to see it kept. The drive to Giovanni's felt both too long and too short. I found myself driving slower than usual, not quite ready for the evening to start, knowing that once it did, it would also end. The restaurant looked exactly the same. Same brick facade, same warm golden light spilling from the windows, same hand-painted sign that had been there since I was a child. Some things in life remain constant, even when everything else changes. We stepped inside, and the host, a young woman with kind eyes, greeted us warmly. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Actually, yes, under Margaret Daniels." It was prepaid. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by something softer. Sympathy, maybe, or understanding. "Of course. Please, come with me." She led us through the restaurant, past other diners laughing and talking, past a bar where a couple shared wine, past all the ordinary moments of people living their ordinary lives. And then she stopped at a table by the window, the same table where Mom and I had sat, the same table where we'd talked for 6 hours, where I'd read her the menu, where she'd smiled at me like I'd hung the moon. "Your waiter will be right with you," the host said, and there was something in her voice, a gentleness that suggested she knew this was more than just a dinner reservation. Sarah and I sat down, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. I stared at the empty chair across from me, the one Mom had occupied that night, and I could almost see her there, almost hear her laugh, almost feel her presence like a warmth in the air. "She knew," Sarah whispered. "She knew we'd need this." Before I could respond, our waiter approached, and I recognized him immediately, the same young man who'd served Mom and me that night. He paused when he saw my face, and recognition dawned in his eyes. "You were here with your mother a couple months ago." "Yes," I managed, my throat suddenly tight. "Yes, I remember her." He smiled softly. "She was lovely. She talked about you the whole time, even when you went to the restroom. Said you were the best son a mother could ask for." Something cracked open in my chest. She'd said that? Even after years of neglect, of missed calls and postponed visits, she bragged about me to a stranger? She prepaid for this meal. I said, my voice rough. She wanted us to come back. The waiter nodded slowly. understanding passing between us without need for explanation. Then I'll make sure it's perfect. What would you like? The vodka pasta, I said. She loved the vodka pasta. I remember. And for you, sir? The chicken marsala. Same as before. And a bottle of the house red? He asked gently, remembering. Yes, thank you. When he left, Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Talk to me. What are you feeling? How could I put into words? The grief that sat heavy in my stomach. The gratitude that brought tears to my eyes. The regret that would probably haunt me for the rest of my life. The love, so much love, that hurt because it had nowhere to go now except into memories and moments like this. I keep thinking about time. I finally said, how we measured in all the wrong ways. We count years, but we should be counting moments. We mark birthdays and anniversaries, but we forget to mark the ordinary Tuesdays when someone we love was just there, present, available. You're making up for it now, Sarah said. But that's the thing, I can't. I can't make up for lost time. I can only recognize it, mourn it, and try to do better with the time I have left. With you, with the kids, with everyone I love. The wine arrived, and the waiter poured 2 glasses with practiced grace. When he left, I raised my glass. To Mom, who loved me better than I deserved, who gave me more chances than I earned, and who taught me, in the end, what really matters. Sarah clinked her glass against mine. To Margaret, the wisest woman I've ever known. We drank, and the wine tasted like memory, like that night with Mom, like every family dinner and celebration, an ordinary evening that had been elevated by her presence. The food came, and it was exactly as I remembered. The vodka pasta creamy and rich, the chicken marsala tender and perfectly seasoned. We ate slowly, savoring each bite, because this meal was meant to be savored. This meal was a gift, and gifts should never be rushed. You know what I keep thinking about? Sarah said, twirling pasta on her fork. That morning when I asked you to take her on a date, I was so nervous. I didn't know if you'd be angry, if you'd think I was overstepping. But I've been watching her fade a little more each year, and I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I'm glad you didn't. Are you? Even now, with all the pain? I consider the question seriously, because it deserves serious consideration. Would it have been easier if I'd never had that dinner with Mom? If I'd continued in my pattern of benign neglect until she'd pass away, and I'd been left with nothing but regret and what-ifs? Yes, I said firmly. Even now, especially now, because at least I have that night. At least I have the memory of her smile, her laughter, the way she looked at me like I was still her little boy. If I'd never had that, the regret would be unbearable. But you're still carrying regret. Of course I am. I'll carry it for the rest of my life. But it's different now. It's regret tempered with gratitude. I got to tell her I loved her. I got to show her she mattered. Not enough, never enough, but something. And that something makes all the difference. We talked through dinner the way Mom and I had talked that night, about everything and nothing, about the kids and their growing independence, about work and dreams and the future we were building, about grief and how it changes shape but never fully disappears. And I realized something profound. Mom wasn't just at this table in memory. She was in the conversation itself, in the way Sarah and I had learned to be more present with each other, in the way we'd started prioritizing time over convenience, in the way we begun living with the awareness that nothing is guaranteed. No one is promised tomorrow, and the only moment we truly have is now. She'd changed me with that one dinner, and through changing me, she'd changed how I loved everyone else. When we finished eating, the waiter brought dessert without us ordering, tiramisu, Mom's favorite, with 2 forks and a single candle flickering in the center. From the house, he said softly, in honor of your mother. I stared at the dessert, at the candle casting dancing shadows across the table, and something inside me finally broke open. Not in a painful way, but in a way that let light in, let healing begin. Sarah and I shared the tiramisu in silence, each bite sweet and bittersweet all at once. When we finished, I pulled out Mom's receipt, the one she'd used to prepay for this meal, and laid it on the table between us. She thought of everything, I said, running my finger over her signature on the bottom, even down to the dessert. She wanted you to have this, to have us, together. I looked at my wife. This woman who'd seen my worst failing and loved me enough to force me to confront it, who'd given me the push I needed to reconnect with my mother before it was too late, who sat with me now in my grief and didn't try to fix it, just held space for it to exist. I never thanked you properly, I said, for that morning, for asking me to take Mom on a date. You saved me from regret I wouldn't have been able to live with. You don't need to thank me. I did it because I love you, and because I loved her. But I do need to thank you, because you saw what I was too blind to see. You understood what I was too stubborn to acknowledge. And you cared enough to risk making me uncomfortable for the sake of something more important. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She told me once, years ago, that the hardest part of being a parent is watching your children not need you anymore. Not in the daily way they needed you when they were small. And she said the trick was learning to love them from a distance without letting them see how much the distance hurt. When did she tell you that? At our wedding. She pulled me aside right before we left for our honeymoon, and she said, "Take care of him, but not so much that he forgets about me." And I promised her I wouldn't let that happen. But I broke that promise for years. I watched him pull away from you, watched the phone calls get shorter, the visits less frequent, and I didn't say anything because I didn't think it was my place. It wasn't your fault. Let me finish, Sarah said gently. That morning when I finally asked you to take her on a date, I wasn't just doing it for her. I was doing it for us. Because I'd been watching you become someone I didn't fully recognize. Someone who'd forgotten that love requires presence. And I knew if you lost her without fixing that, it would break something in you that I wouldn't be able to repair. I reached across the table and took both her hands in mine. You were right about all of it. I just wish we'd had more time. We had enough time for her to know. That's what matters. She knew, and she forgave me, and she loved me anyway. Not every story gets that ending. We sat there in the candlelight, holding hands across the table where Mom and I had held a conversation that changed my life, and I felt her there with us, in the warmth, in the love, in the forgiveness that permeated everything. The waiter returned with a check, then paused. Actually, it's been taken care of. Your mother made sure of it. We know, I said, but this is for you. I left a generous tip, the kind Mom would have wanted me to leave, the kind that said thank you for your kindness, thank you for remembering, thank you for being part of the story. We walked out of Giovanni's into the cool night air, and I felt lighter somehow, not unburdened. The grief was still there, would always be there, but less crushed beneath its weight. Sarah linked her arm through mine as we walked to the car. What are you thinking? That I used to measure love by the big things. Anniversaries and gifts and grand gestures. But Mom taught me that love is actually made up of 1,000 small things. Sunday phone calls and voice messages and dinners that last 6 hours because you're not ready to say goodbye. She taught me that too, Sarah said, just by watching how she loved you, even when you weren't around to see it. We drove home in comfortable silence, the kind that comes after emotional conversations when words have been exhausted and what remains is just being together. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw lights on in the house. Through the window, I could see Emma and Jake in the living room, probably watching a movie or playing video games, or doing any of the countless things teenagers do that seem meaningless until you realize they're not. Their life, they're the moments that matter. They're the memories being made right now, in real time, while we're present to witness them. I don't want to waste another minute, I said suddenly. Then don't, Sarah replied simply. We went inside, and instead of heading to our room or checking emails, or doing any of the things we usually did after going out, I sat down on the couch between my children. Hey, Emma said, surprised. How was dinner? It was perfect. Tell me about your day. I want to hear everything. She exchanged a glance with Jake, probably wondering if I'd lost my mind. But then she smiled and started talking about school and friends and some drama that seemed earth-shattering in the way that only teenage drama can be. And I listened, really listened, asked questions, engaged. Jake joined in, telling me about a science project he was working on, and I made a mental note to help with it over the weekend. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because these moments, right here, right now, my children talking and laughing and trusting me with the details of their lives, these were the moments Mom had been trying to teach me to treasure. Sarah watched from the doorway with tears in her eyes, and I knew she was seeing it. The change, the shift, the man I was becoming because of a lesson learned too late, but not too late to matter. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat at my desk and pulled out paper and a pen. Real paper, real pen, not an email or a text or a voice message. And I wrote letters to Emma and Jake. Letters they wouldn't read until I was gone, until they were adults deal with their own lives and their own regrets and their own realizations about time and love and presence. I wrote them about their grandmother, about the mistakes I'd made and the lessons I'd learned. I wrote about that dinner at Giovanni's and how one evening had changed everything. I wrote about love and time and the importance of showing up, not just today, but every day, not just for the big moments, but for the small ones that add up to a life. And I ended each letter the same way Mom had ended hers to me. I love you more than the stars. I always have, and I always will, because some truths are universal, some loves are eternal, and some lessons are worth passing down generation to generation in the hope that maybe, just maybe, someone will learn them before it's too late. Do you believe our loved ones can still send us messages after they're gone? In prepaid dinners, in recipe cards, in the way a familiar song plays at just the right moment? Share your stories of signs from beyond in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Spring came gradually, the way it always does, with hesitant warmth and cautious blooms that weren't quite sure if winter had truly released its grip. It had been 7 months since Mom died. 7 months of learning how to carry grief like a stone in my pocket. Always there, sometimes heavier than others, but no longer crushing. On a Saturday morning, I found myself standing at the entrance to the cemetery with a bouquet of tulips, Mom's favorite, and a folded piece of paper in my pocket. Sarah had offered to come with me, but I needed to do this alone. Some conversations are meant for just two people, even when one of them is no longer alive to respond. I walked the familiar path to her grave, past granite markers bearing names and dates that represented entire lives compressed into 2 numbers and a dash. Mom's headstone was new enough that the grass hadn't fully grown back around it yet. Fresh, raw, a wound on the earth matching the one in my heart. I sat down beside her grave, not caring that the grass was damp with morning dew, and arranged the tulips in the vase we'd placed there months ago. "Hi, Mom," I said, my voice sounding strange in the quiet morning air. "I brought your favorites. The Patel's Garden Center had them on sale, and I thought of you. I always think of you." A bird sang somewhere in the tree above me. The world continued its indifferent turning. I've been meaning to visit more often. I know. That's what I always said, right? Next weekend. But I've been coming every Sunday. Sometimes I just sit here for a few minutes between church and lunch. Sometimes I stay longer and tell you about the week. I'm trying, Mom. I'm really trying to be better at showing up. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket, Mom's letter, creased now from being read, and reread countless times. I still carry this with me. Your words, your love, your grace. I read it whenever I'm struggling, whenever I feel like I'm slipping back into old patterns. It reminds me what you wanted from me. Not perfection, not endless guilt, just presence, just love lived out loud. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment, I could almost pretend it was her voice, responding in the language nature speaks when words fail. I took your recipe box to Emma's home EC class last month. She made your chocolate chip cookies for a project and won first place. The teacher wanted the recipe, and Emma said no. It's a family secret, passed down through generations. You would have been so proud of her. She's becoming such an amazing young woman, and she has so much of you in her. I traced my fingers over her name carved in the granite. Margaret and Daniels. Beloved mother, grandmother, friend. The word seemed inadequate for everything she'd been, everything she'd meant. Jake wants to be an aerospace engineer. He says it's because of those rockets he built. But I think it's really because of you, because you were the only one who took his dreams seriously when he was small, who listened when he talked about space like other people listen to important news. You made him feel like his passions mattered. A couple walked past in the distance, also visiting their dead, also having conversations with people who could no longer answer. We were all part of the same club now, the club of those who've learned too late to appreciate what they had. Sarah misses you. She talks about you often, tells the kids stories I've forgotten or never knew, about how you taught her to make pie crust, about the advice you gave her before our wedding. She says you told her that marriage isn't about never fighting. It's about fighting fair and loving hard. She was right to tell you that you'd be a good mother-in-law. You were the best. I fell silent for a moment, gathering the courage for what I'd come to say. The real reason for this visit. "I forgive you," I said quietly. "I know you never asked for forgiveness, never thought you needed it. But I forgive you anyway for not demanding more from me, for accepting the scraps of time I gave you when you deserved feasts. You were so busy making sure you weren't a burden that you let me off the hook for being a terrible son. So I forgive you for that, and I ask you to forgive me in return." Tears ran freely down my cheeks now, dripping onto the grass that would eventually cover her completely. I wish I could have one more dinner with you, one more phone call, one more voice message that starts with, "Good morning, sweetheart." But I can't. So instead, I'm trying to live in a way that would make you proud. I'm showing up. I'm being present. I'm learning to measure life in moments instead of years. I pulled out a second piece of paper, the letter I'd written to her weeks after her death, but never had the courage to read aloud until now. I wrote you something. I said, I need you to hear it. I unfolded the paper, and my voice shook as I read. Dear Mom, I've learned something important since you've been gone. Love doesn't end with death. It just changes form. You're not here to hug me anymore, but I feel your arms around me in the recipe cards you left behind. You can't call me on Sundays, but I hear your voice in every conscience-driven decision I make. You can't watch your grandchildren grow up, but they carry pieces of you in their laughter and their kindness. You taught me that time is the only currency that truly matters. Not money, not success, not all the things I was chasing while you sat alone in that house waiting for next weekend. Just time, present undivided, gifted freely to the people we love. I used to think I needed more time with you. More years, more visits, more chances to get it right. But I've realized that what I needed was to be fully present in the time we had. And that last dinner, that gift you and Sarah conspired to give me, taught me how. So I'm teaching your grandchildren to be present, to show up, to never assume there will be another chance. Emma puts down her phone during family dinners now. Jake calls his friends just to talk, not because he needs something. They're learning from your lesson, passed through me, and maybe they'll do better than I did. I love you more than the stars, Mom. And I promise I'll keep showing up for your memory, for my family, for everyone I love. That's how I'll honor you, not with tears and regret, though I have plenty of both, but with presence and love lived out loud. Your son, always, Tom. I folded the letter and tucked it back into my pocket. The morning had grown warmer, the sun climbing higher in the sky, and I knew I should probably head home. Sarah and the kids would be wondering where I was. But I sat there a few minutes longer, my hand resting on the cool granite of Mom's headstone, feeling connected to her in a way that transcended physical presence. I'll be back next Sunday. I promised. And the Sunday after that, not out of obligation, but because I want to, because this time with you, even this one-sided conversation, matters to me. I stood slowly, my knees stiff from sitting on the damp ground, and I kissed my fingers before pressing them to her name on the stone. I love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. Thank you for that dinner. Thank you for teaching me what really matters. Thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. I walked away without looking back, carrying her with me the way I'd carry her for the rest of my life. Not as a weight, but as a light showing me the way forward. That evening, our house filled with people and noise and laughter. It was the first of what I decided would become a new tradition. Sunday family dinners, just like Mom used to host back when we were kids, and the house was always full of love and chaos, and the smell of something delicious cooking. Sarah and I cooked together, using Mom's recipes, making too much food the way she always had, because you never knew who might stop by and you want to make sure everyone was fed. Emma set the table with the good dishes, the ones Sarah usually saved for holidays, because I'd insisted that Sunday with family was holiday enough. Jake made a centerpiece from flowers in our garden, arranging them with surprising care and artistry. My siblings came with their families. My brother from Seattle, who'd relocated closer after Mom died, realizing what I'd realized, that proximity matters, that you can't get time back. My sister from Denver, who flew in for the weekend, who'd started making monthly trips because she didn't want to have the same regrets I carried. We crammed around our dining table that wasn't quite big enough for everyone, pulling in chairs from other rooms, making it work because that's what family does. Before we ate, I stood and raised my glass. I want to say something. I began and the room fell silent. 7 months ago, I lost my mother. Some of you were there, know how hard it was. All of you know I've been struggling with it. Heads nodded around the table, understanding in every face. But what I realized is that losing her taught me something invaluable, that the only way to honor the people we love is to become the kind of people they'd be proud of. Mom will be proud of this. All of us, here together, making time for family, making each other priority. I looked at each face around the table, my wife, my children, my siblings and their families, all the people who made up my world. From now on, this is what we do. Every Sunday we gather. We cook, we eat, we talk, we laugh. We show up for each other, not because we have to, but because we want to, because life is short and time is precious, and the people we love won't be here forever. My voice broke slightly, but I pushed through. So this is for Mom, and for all of us. To family, to presence, to love lived out loud. To Mom, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. To family, Sarah added. To being together, Emma said. We drank, and then we ate, and the conversation flowed the way it does when people are truly present with each other. Stories were told and retold. Jokes were made. Children ran around causing controlled chaos, while adults pretended to be annoyed but were secretly delighted. At one point, I stepped outside for some air and found Jake sitting on the back porch steps, looking up at the darkening sky. Hey, buddy, what are you doing out here? Just looking at the stars, thinking about Grandma. I sat down beside him, following his gaze upward. Yeah, what about her? Do you think she can see us? From wherever she is. I consider the question seriously. The way kids' questions always deserve to be considered. I don't know if she can see us in the way you mean, but I think she's with us anyway. In the recipes we cook, in the stories we tell, in the way we're all together tonight because of what she taught me. What did she teach you? That love isn't just something you feel. It's something you do. You show up. You make time. You choose the people you love over and over again, especially when it's inconvenient. Jake was quiet for a moment, still staring at the stars. I miss her. Me too, buddy, every single day. But we're doing what she'd want, right? Having everyone together like this. Yeah, we're doing exactly what she'd want. He leaned against me, this 12-year-old who was growing up too fast, and I wrapped my arm around him. We sat there in the gathering darkness, listening to the sound of family inside the house, and I felt something close to peace. This was it. This was the lesson. Not perfection, not endless regret, not trying to turn back time or fix what couldn't be fixed. Just this. Choosing presence, choosing love, choosing to show up day after day after day. Later that night, after everyone had left and the kids were in bed and the house was clean again, Sarah and I stood in the kitchen, having one last cup of tea. It was perfect, she said, leaning against the counter. Your mom would have loved it. She would have fussed about there being too much food and not enough seating, and she would have been in her element. I agreed. Are you okay? Really okay? I thought about the question. Was I okay? I'd lost my mother. I carried regret that would never fully fade. I'd learned important lessons the hardest possible way. But I'd also changed, grown, become someone different, and I hoped someone better, someone who knew how to be present, someone who understood that time was the most precious gift we could give. Yeah, I said, and I meant it. I'm okay. I'm sad, and I'll probably always be sad about how much time I wasted. But I'm also grateful for that last dinner, for the letter, for the lesson, for the chance to do better with everyone else I love. Sarah set down her tea and came to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. She's proud of you. I know she is. I hope so. God, I hope so. We stood there in our kitchen, holding each other in the quiet house that had been full of life and laughter just hours before, and I made a silent promise to myself, to Sarah, to my kids, to my mother's memory. I would not waste another moment. I would not let another Sunday pass without connection. I would not assume I had endless tomorrows to say the things that needed to be said today. Because the truth Mom taught me was simple but profound. Love isn't about how long we have someone. It's not measured in years or decades. It's measured in presence and attention, in the choice to show up even when it's inconvenient. It's measured in Sunday dinners and phone calls and voice messages that start with good morning. It's measured in the stories we tell and the recipes we pass down and the traditions we keep alive. It's measured in the way we make people feel seen, valued, loved. Not someday, not next weekend, but right now, in this moment, while we still have a chance. I still visit Mom's grave every Sunday. After family dinner, before it gets too dark, I drive to the cemetery with fresh flowers and sit for a while. Sometimes I tell her about my week. Sometimes I just sit in silence, feeling her presence in the wind and the bird song and the peaceful quiet of that place. Emma comes with me sometimes now. Jake, too. They're learning their own lessons about grief and memory and how to love someone who's no longer physically here. We cook Mom's recipes regularly. The pot roast is a family favorite now. Emma's perfected the chocolate chip cookies and has started teaching them to her friends. Jake made the apple pie for his school's baking competition and won first place. The recipe box sits on our kitchen counter now, not tucked away in a drawer. We use it constantly, and each time we pull out a card, we remember the woman who wrote it, the woman who taught us that food is love made tangible. I've started leaving voice messages for my kids when I'm away on business trips. Good morning, sweetheart, I'll say to Emma. Hope you have a wonderful day, I'll tell Jake. I learned from the best. After all, Sarah and I went back to Giovanni's on our anniversary. We sat at the same table, ordered the same food, and raised a glass to the woman who'd brought us back together in more ways than one. The waiter remembered us, smiled knowingly, and made sure our dessert came with a candle. Life goes on. Time passes. The acute pain of loss fades into a chronic ache that you learn to carry. But what doesn't fade, what I won't let fade, is the lesson Mom taught me with that one dinner, that prepaid meal, that letter from beyond the grave. Time is the only currency that truly matters. How we spend it defines who we are. And the people we love deserve more than our leftover time, our distracted attention, our promises of next weekend. They deserve us, present, engaged, fully there. Not because they've earned it or because we owe them or because of obligation, but simply because they won't be here forever. None of us will. And when they're gone, what remains aren't the things we meant to do or the visits we planned to make or the phone calls we intended to return. What remains are the moments we actually showed up, the dinners that lasted 6 hours because we weren't ready to say goodbye. The Sunday afternoon spent together for no reason other than being together mattered. The voice messages that bookend days with love. The recipes passed down with trembling hands and teary eyes. The love lived out loud while we still had the chance. I used to measure life in years. Now I measure in moments. In Sunday dinners and surprise phone calls and the way my daughter laughs exactly like my mother used to. In the recipe box on the counter and the letters tucked in my drawer and the memories that grow sweeter with time even as they break my heart. In the way I now show up, not perfectly, never perfectly, but consistently, deliberately, with full presence and open heart. Because Mom was right about everything. Love isn't something you feel in your heart and keep locked away, promising to express it someday when life is less busy, less complicated, less demanding. Love is the calls you make when you don't have to. The visits that aren't convenient but happen anyway. The dinners that last too long because you're not ready to leave. The moments you choose presence over productivity. Connection over convenience. Love is showing up again and again and again. Not next weekend. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Now. Today. This moment. Because sometimes the smallest invitation becomes a last gift. Sometimes the dinner you almost skipped becomes a memory that saves you. And sometimes the person you've been taking for granted is the one who will teach you the most important lesson of all, that nothing lasts forever except the love we give away while we still have a chance. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love, if it made you think about the phone calls you've been putting off and the visits you keep postponing, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe. And before you close this tab, before you scroll to the next video, before you go back to whatever was taking up your time, call your mother, call your father, call whoever in your life you've been meaning to reach out to, but keep putting off until next weekend. Tell them you love them.